The sky outside the cockpit was a stretch of endless blue, serene and undisturbed, unlike the message that had just shattered Isabel Hartley's world. Cruising at 40,000 feet over the Pacific Ocean, on her return leg from Tokyo to San Francisco, Isabel, a 38-year-old commercial airline captain, had opened her tablet to review routine schedules during the layover in Anchorage. But there it was. Subject line, "Let's be adults about this." The message was cold, almost corporate. Haha. Her husband, Colin, announced he had filed for divorce, emptied their joint accounts, and was moving on, just like 11 years of marriage ended in a 5-point email. Her hand didn't tremble. Her breath didn't. She simply locked the screen, adjusted her collar, and returned to the pre-flight checklist. A co-pilot's voice chirped over her headset, asking if she was ready for final descent clearance. "Affirmative," she replied, steady as ever. The irony wasn't lost on her. Isabel had spent her entire career guiding hundreds of passengers safely through turbulence, but this was the storm she never saw coming. As she initiated the descent into San Francisco, her face gave away nothing, but inside, a single, searing thought took root. He didn't just leave, he executed it like a mission. The betrayal was cold, calculated, and timed for when he believed she'd be too far away to respond. What he didn't know, what he'd underestimated, was that Isabel never crashed under pressure. She didn't panic. She planned. And if he thought this was over, he'd forgotten the most important rule about pilots. They always have a backup plan. As the landing gear deployed and the lights of the city emerged beneath the clouds, Isabel made a silent vow. Colin may have started this, but she was going to finish it. They met on a warm October afternoon at a friend's engagement party in Charleston. Isabel, just 2 years into her first captain promotion, and Colin, a rising star in real estate, who spoke with charm and moved with confidence. He admired her ambition, her uniform, the way she commanded a room without trying. She admired his charisma, his stories of closing big deals, and the way he made her laugh like she hadn't in years. Within 6 months, they were married. The early years felt like something out of a catalog. 2 successful professionals, a mortgage on a modest craftsman home in Savannah, dinner dates between flight schedules and open house weekends. They weren't perfect, but they were stable. Or so Isabel believed. But slowly, like the subtle pressure drop before a storm, things began to shift. At first it was the little things. Colin stopped asking when her next flight was. He stopped leaving her notes on the fridge like he used to. He still played the doting husband at company functions, but behind closed doors there was distance. Isabel chalked it up to stress, the natural ebb and flow of long-distance marriage. After all, she was gone 10 days a month, sometimes more. She reasoned, "He's holding down the house. He's tired." She tried harder. Booked surprise weekends, changed flight schedules, made it home for anniversaries. He'd smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Colin began working later. New clients appeared, ones she never met. He said they were just referrals. Isabel, ever the practical pilot, never made accusations without data. She believed in facts over feelings. But as the silences between them grew longer, so did her unease. He rarely picked up when she called on layovers. When he did, he sounded distant, like her voice reminded him of something he was trying to forget. The irony was bitter. She had built her life around communication, precision, and awareness in the skies, only to find herself lost in the fog at home. What she didn't realize then was that Colin hadn't just grown tired. He'd been quietly closing the door, one subtle silence at a time. Back, Isabel could see the warning signs were everywhere. Small, almost forgettable details that only made sense in hindsight. A new password lock on their shared laptop, which Colin brushed off as a security update. A strange perfume scent on one of his shirts that wasn't hers. The gym membership he suddenly renewed, even though he rarely used it. "Just trying to stay healthy," he'd said, grinning. She wanted to believe him. She always wanted to believe him. But something in his eyes had shifted. A disinterest masked as busyness, the kind of disengagement that doesn't show up in arguments but in absence. The final hint came a week before her Tokyo rotation. Colin had forgotten their dinner plans, again. Instead, he claimed a last-minute client meeting and left in a hurry, wearing cologne she hadn't seen him use in years. That night, Isabel sat at their dining table alone, staring at the flickering candle until the wax melted into stillness. Something was wrong, but she didn't scream or snoop. She went quiet, strategic. If this was turbulence, she wasn't going to white-knuckle it. She was going to check her instruments and prepare for impact. Over the next few days, Isabel made her own subtle moves. She opened a secondary savings account at a bank Colin didn't know about, and rerouted 25% of her direct deposit there. She packed away her grandmother's heirloom ring and a few legal documents in a safety deposit box under her maiden name. Then, without saying a word, she installed a new security system, one that uploaded footage directly to her cloud. This in case, she told herself. Not because she expected betrayal, but because pilots never ignore red lights. They don't argue with the weather, they just adjust course, quietly, carefully, and with full awareness that the storm is coming. The day Isabel landed back in San Francisco, the sky was clear, but her instincts were clouded with unease. After greeting the crew and signing off the final report, she skipped the usual pilot lounge coffee and went straight to the rental lot. Sitting alone in the driver's seat of a silver sedan, she opened her banking app. Her fingers hesitated, but only for a second. Then came the drop. Joint savings. She blinked, refreshed the screen. No change. In less than 4 weeks, Colin had drained nearly every dollar. Her heart didn't race, her breath stayed even, but a cold, hollow pit opened in her stomach. She scrolled through the transactions, transfer after transfer, starting the day after she boarded her outbound flight to Tokyo. Some to an unfamiliar account, some masked behind vague labels like consulting and property advance. But the worst came next. She checked the home loan account and found it was no longer dormant. Colin had activated a home equity line, one she never approved. Her name was the only one listed on the original VA mortgage. And yet, someone had signed her authorization. With trembling calm, she pulled out her phone and opened the app connected to their home security system, one Colin probably assumed she forgot about. The screen flickered to life. Footage from 2 days ago. A tall, dark-honored woman she didn't recognize, wearing Isabel's favorite robe, sipping from her ceramic mug, walking their golden retriever in the front yard Isabel had planted herself. Then Colin appeared behind her, laughing, uncomfortable. At home. It wasn't just financial theft. It was identity theft. Of her home, her life, her space. And as Isabel watched the footage in silence, one thought crystallized in her mind. He wasn't just moving on. He was erasing her entirely. And she wasn't going to let that happen. The next morning, Isabel sat across from her old friend Ava Brooks in a quiet law office on the outskirts of San Francisco. Ava had gone from campus activist to top-tier corporate attorney, and now, more than ever, Isabel was grateful for her brilliance and discretion. She slid her tablet across the desk, showing Ava the screenshots of bank transfers, the home equity line, and the security footage. Ava didn't gasp. She didn't blink. She just whispered, "You're not dealing with heartbreak. You're dealing with fraud." They went to work immediately. Isabel signed over power of attorney to Ava to initiate the legal review. Together, they dug through mortgage documents, and there it was, a refinance application for $280,000, 0 cents, bearing a signature that looked like Isabel but wasn't. The middle initial was wrong. The flourish on the H in Hartley was missing. It was a forgery. The loan had been approved 3 weeks ago through a local branch in Savannah. Ava cross-referenced the paperwork and found something worse. Maya Bennett, the woman from the security footage, was listed as a co-signer. "He's trying to sell the house," Ava said, eyes narrowing. "And with your name as the owner, that makes this federal." The two women traveled to the Savannah branch unannounced. Isabel presented her government-issued pilot ID, her real signature, and video proof that she hadn't been in the country at the time of the signing. The loan officer turned pale. "This is a problem," he stammered. "I'll have to report this." Good, Isabel thought. Report it. That evening, she filed a police report for forgery and financial fraud. Ava reached out to her contacts at the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Office of Inspector General. The VA loan was federally protected. Colin's scheme had crossed a line. Isabel didn't need to scream or confront him yet. She had no intention of giving him a dramatic scene. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was chess. And if Colin thought she would fold, he'd clearly forgotten the golden rule of aviation and of Isabel Hartley. You don't make your move until you're certain of the landing. Within 48 hours, Ava's quiet investigation turned up more than either of them expected. The refinance wasn't an isolated betrayal. It was the tip of something calculated, repeatable, and criminal. Late into the evening, Ava leaned across her desk and dropped a folder in front of Isabel. "Meet Trevor Lang," she said. Inside were records of a local real estate agent who specialized in fast home flips for cash buyers. He wasn't just shady, really. He had prior charges related to wire fraud and real estate manipulation. And more importantly, he had closed multiple deals with Maya Bennett over the last 2 years. Isabel stared at the printouts. Same buyer names, same fast sell signatures. In each case, the seller had been either deployed, stationed abroad, or completely unaware the sale had even happened until it was too late. Ava tapped the last page. "Colin's been working with Lang. We have email threads. Maya was the plant. They target people like you, professionals who are away from home, too distracted to monitor every document. This isn't a breakup. This is a blueprint." Stunned but steady, Isabel asked the next logical question. Who else did they do this to? Ava had already made the call. By morning, 2 FBI agents, Special Agent Drew Patel and Special Agent Leslie Monroe, arrived at the office. "We've been tracking Lang for months," Patel explained. "But your case, it's the first time we've had a living victim with documentation, timeline, and access. You're not the first, Captain Hartley, but you might be the one who finally brings it down." Isabel nodded once. "Whatever you need," she said. "I'm in." That night, Isabel sat alone in her motel room, staring out at the city skyline, realizing the scope of it all. Colin hadn't just betrayed her. He'd turned their entire marriage into a long con. But what he never understood, what none of them understood, was that Isabel wasn't built to collapse. She was trained for turbulence, engineered for endurance, and now, with the full force of federal law behind her, she wasn't just going to reclaim her life, she was going to expose them all. For the next 2 weeks, Isabel vanished from view. Officially, she was still stationed overseas. Her flight schedule, emails, and even her voicemail reinforced the illusion. But in truth, she had checked into a small boutique motel under her mother's maiden name, just 20 miles from her own home in Savannah. Her days were spent gathering intel with Ava and Agent Patel, and her nights were quiet, focused, strategic. The cloud discussion security system she'd installed months earlier became her greatest weapon. Her personal black box, capturing every movement inside her home, while Colin believed she was on another continent. One morning, just before dawn, the cameras caught exactly what they needed. Colin walked through the living room with a coffee mug Isabel had bought him on their first anniversary. Following him was Maya, on the phone with someone named Trevor, confirming an upcoming walkthrough. "He's still in Japan," Maya said confidently. "We've got another week to wrap it up." 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang. A man entered, tall, sharp-suited, clipboard in hand. Trevor Lang. They walked through the house, discussing listing details, price ranges, and timelines. "List at $450, 0 cents, Trevor suggested. "Take a cash offer for $400, 0 cents. "He won't fight it." "These traveling types never do," Colin laughed. "She's probably too busy flying to even notice." From her motel room, Isabel didn't blink. She recorded every second, sent the footage to Patel, and waited. The trap was set, not with drama, not with confrontation, but with precision. Just like she handled turbulence at 38,000 feet, she was now handling betrayal. With cold, steady resolve, and while they were inside her home, sealing their plan with smug grins and forged papers, They had no idea the whole thing was already unraveling from the inside out. At exactly 10:27 a.m. on a Tuesday, 3 unmarked SUVs pulled up to the curb outside Isabel's house. From her rental car parked a block away, she watched through binoculars as federal agents in plain clothes moved with calm precision. Inside, Colin, Maya, and Trevor Lang were reviewing paperwork in the kitchen, the same kitchen Isabel had designed during her last stretch of leave. They didn't hear the agents enter at first. The front door burst open a heartbeat later, followed by firm voices and drawn badges. Isabel couldn't hear the words, but she didn't need to. The scene played out in perfect clarity through her phone, streaming live from the security cameras they had foolishly ignored. Colin raised his hands. Maya backed against the wall. Trevor tried to slide something into his briefcase, likely a forged deed, but was stopped mid-moments. Moments later, all 3 were led out in handcuffs, blinking against the sunlight like it was the first real thing they'd seen in weeks. Isabel's phone buzzed. It was Agent Patel. "We've got everything. On camera, on tape, signed and time-stamped," she said. "You nailed the timing. This isn't just fraud, it's conspiracy and attempted property theft." Isabel exhaled, slow and steady. "Copy that," she replied. She didn't cheer. She didn't cry. Instead, she sat back and whispered the same words she used when landing through stormy skies. Touchdown. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. Calculated, deliberate, and complete. And while Colin had tried to erase her existence with quiet deception, Isabel had dismantled his entire scheme with quieter strength. She hadn't needed a confrontation. She had needed proof. And now, he was the one watching everything fall apart, while she watched it all from a safe, controlled distance. In the weeks that followed, the legal pieces fell swiftly into place, just as Isabel and Ava had anticipated. With the FBI's case airtight and the security footage leaving no room for denial, Colin was forced into a corner. He signed a settlement agreement under federal supervision, full restitution of the stolen funds, forfeiture of any claim to Isabel's property or pension, and a written confession acknowledging the forged signature on the refinance. Maya faced separate charges for identity fraud and aiding in the conspiracy, while Trevor Lang, facing multiple counts of wire fraud and real estate deception, agreed to a plea deal that implicated even more players in the ring. The house was officially restored to Isabel's sole ownership, but she didn't move back in. Too many ghosts lingered between those walls. Instead, she began the quiet process of selling it, on her own terms, this time. What mattered more than bricks and beams was the truth. Colin's entire scheme had been dismantled not through rage, but through resolve. One afternoon, as she packed the last of her belongings, a letter arrived. It was from a woman in Washington, D.C. who had found it impossible to find a job at the FBI's case. "You don't know me," I said, speaking loudly. "From a report immediately outlined the scam, but you saved my life. You fought back when most would have walked away." Isabel read it twice, then pinned it to her travel bag. It was proof that her quiet war had meaning, that strength in silence can echo farther than any scream. 1 year later, the sun rose gently over 10 acres of pine-draped land in western Montana, where Isabel Hartley now called home. A cozy cabin sat nestled between the trees, its porch lined with potted herbs, and a rocking chair that creaked softly in the morning breeze. Scout, her German Shepherd rescue, chased birds along the creek that ran behind the property, free and wild like the new rhythm of her life. Isabel had sold the Savannah house and taken early retirement from commercial flying. After 2 decades in the sky, she now taught flight basics to young women at a local aviation club, girls who dreamed of touching the clouds the way she once did. She didn't miss the turbulence, the time zones, or the double lives that some people led. What she cherished now were small, certain things: the smell of pine after rain, the stillness of dawn, and the sound of Scout's paws on forest soil. Every now and then, she'd receive messages, strangers whose lives had been touched by the case she helped crack. One woman had even sent a quilt embroidered with the words, "You landed the truth when no one else saw the storm." Inside her kitchen, pinned to the refrigerator, still hung that first letter, the one that reminded her she had turned betrayal into something greater. Isabel had no need for revenge stories anymore. She had reclaimed her peace, and this time, no one could forge it or take it. The story of Isabel Hartley is a powerful reminder that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it moves in silence with precision and grace. Betrayed in the most calculated way by the person she trusted most, Isabel chose not to react with fury, but with focus. Instead of chasing drama, she gathered truth. Instead of collapsing, she built a case. And in doing so, she proved that justice isn't about revenge, it's about restoration. One of the greatest lessons in Isabel's journey is that preparation is power. Her quiet intuition, her small protective steps, and her refusal to ignore the red flags allowed her not only to survive betrayal, but to expose a system that preyed on others like her. She didn't just fight for herself, she protected countless others, becoming the voice that turned private pain into public accountability. This story also reminds us that healing doesn't always come with dramatic closure. Sometimes, it's found in the stillness of a Montana sunrise, in the rustle of pine needles, or the letter of a stranger saying, "Because of you, I didn't lose everything." In the end, Isabel's greatest victory wasn't legal. It was the quiet peace of a life rebuilt, on her own terms.